Hi, my name is Jenelle Riley. I'm an editor at Variety, and thank you so much for joining us for this Q&A with the cast of Apple TV Plus's The Essex Serpent. At this time, please join me in welcoming some of the members of this fantastic ensemble. We have Claire Danes, Tom Hiddleston, Frank Dillane, and Clémence Poésy. Thank you all so much for being here.
Thanks, Jenelle.
This is largely an audience of actors, so I actually always like to start at the beginning and ask if there was a moment you knew you wanted to be an actor, a specific role you played, or maybe something you saw where you sort of got bitten by the bug. And let's start with Claire.
I knew at an alarmingly young age that this was something I needed to do, and I remember being 5 years old and watching Madonna bop around on stage on television, and I was in my parents' bedroom on the bed, and it just kind of computed. I understood suddenly that you could perform as your job, and that just it was wildly epiphanous, and I was so exalted that I started bouncing on the bed like I needed to discharge all of that energy because it was such an amazing revelation. So yeah, I mean, it's Madonna's fault. But no, I don't know why. It was just innate within me, and here I am.
Well, you know that they're casting the Madonna biopic in London right now.
Hello.
Be careful, I may start jumping on the chair. No.
I would love to see that.
Yeah.
Tom, what about for you?
For me, it was probably... So I went to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival a long time ago, and we did an old play called Journey's End.
Oh, wow. How old were you? How long ago?
I was 18.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. 18? Yes, I think I was 18. And so it's a play about First World War officers in a company, and it was written in 1926, I believe. Very, very authentic, and I guess I was as old as the character I was playing, and we took it to the Edinburgh Fringe, and that was when people close to me kind of came up to me afterwards and said, "You're going to do this for the rest of your life, aren't you?" And I was like, maybe I will. I'll see. Let's see about that. So yeah, that's probably that moment.
Were you Raleigh?
I was stand-up.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good one. Frank, for you?
For me, I mean, I always spent a lot of time in theatres when I was from a baby, really, because my dad and my mum are both actors. So I was always involved in being backstage and always around plays. And I just always really liked the environment. And I guess... like Claire, I was quite young when I thought that this would probably be something I'd like to do.
Clémence?
Yeah, quite similarly. My dad does theatre, so I remember watching him come back at night with still lots of black around his eyes. Not because he got in fights, but because he was still wearing remains of his makeup, and I used to find it the most magical thing in the world. And I was lucky enough to be sort of taken to lots of plays quite early on. There's a theatre near Paris in Vincennes called the Théâtre du Soleil, and they have you can see actors getting ready. You can see it's a magical place. It is quite hard to describe, but it's a very beautiful theatre, and it's a beautiful place. And you see actors, you see the dressing rooms, and they look like this sort of, quite magical, and you see them getting ready. And my sister and I were just fascinated by that, and I think maybe it was all about the makeup, really. Seems to be. But so quite early on, I think, I knew that was a world I wanted to be involved in somehow.
That's interesting that your parents were in it. Most kids, I would think, would want to rebel and do the exact opposite.
Well, my mum is a teacher, and I knew I didn't want to do that. So I was kind of...
So we're here today to talk about The Essex Serpent, which is based on the 2016 novel by Sarah Perry. And it's about so many things: science, faith, and love, and all the different kinds of love that there can be. I would love to know how this project found its way to you, and if you were familiar with the novel. And I believe things started sort of with Claire.
Yeah, I had read the novel. Coincidentally, Hugh, my husband, gave it to me for a birthday, maybe a year or two before it came my way as an actor, and I had inhaled it as a reader. So it was, I was thrilled to have a chance to think about realizing it. Yeah, I think it's a beautiful story, kind of retelling of a very familiar ancient biblical myth. The kind of exile from Eden, but Sarah is quite audacious and radical in that instead of punishing Adam and Eve, she forgives them and kind of rewards them with love. And I loved Cora. She's so, she's kind of impossible, right? Like she's a little too much. And yeah, she's really kind of very intellectually hungry and curious, and she can't really repress any of those urges, right? Yeah, and so I don't know. There was a lot to play with.
You say she's too much. I think she's just right, personally.
Well, I agree.
But she is,
agree.
Very much ahead of her time in so many ways, and coming to this community that is very wary of her.
Yeah, she had been in an abusive relationship for pretty much all of her adult life, and she absorbed a lot of shame, and her development was kind of stunted, and when her husband dies, she's kind of suddenly released from that and kind of emancipated and allowed to be kind of a free, autonomous person. She doesn't quite know what that means initially, and she's a little clumsy and doesn't really know herself. And she starts to figure that out when she engages with the world and meets all of these wonderfully colorful characters. Yeah, I it's not even a love triangle. It's like everybody sort of falls in love with each other, and kind of including, Clémence's Stella and Cora. They're meant to be adversaries and rivals, and in fact, that's not at all the case. I just so appreciated that it was written with such a kind of generous spirit.
Yeah, I actually described it as a love octagon.
Yeah,
but
I think that's right.
Bigger shape.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Tom, for you, how did the project come its way to you, and what interested you in playing, this man of faith who, is really trying to hold his community together?
Yes, that's exactly who he is. I read it towards the end of 2020, and it came with a beautiful letter from Clio Barnard, the director, who I've admired for a long time, and I had met her actually at the London Film Festival. We both had films screening at the festival about 10 years ago, and I always remembered that meeting, and I read the 6 scripts very quickly. I found them really complete and very compelling. this story about passionate people at a time where everything was changing, looking for meaning, and Will presents initially as such a solid, such a decent, such a dutiful, responsible man whose faith provides him and others with certainty and clarity. But the times are changing, and there are questions and dimensions in his soul that haven't been awakened yet, and he's almost like a tree whose roots are shaken by Cora and by the serpent, and the serpent is a symbol of ideas and feelings which he hasn't yet understood. And I thought it was just very deftly woven. I found Sarah Perry's novel and Anna Simon's screenplay immensely compassionate and forgiving, really interested in depth in every sense. What lies deep beneath the surface of the waters of the estuary? There is something in the water, and it is making everyone afraid. So it was very compelling as a mystery, but also as a psychological drama about, as you say, this octagon in a way of souls who are all colliding. There's so much humanity in the story, and it's about love and fear, and the power of love to dispel fear, I think, which is as timeless a story and as resonant a story for right now as I can think of.
Clémence, what about for you? Because as Claire referenced, Stella is such a fascinating character because there is this relationship between Stella and Cora that I'm actually really drawn to, and I don't think that you get to see that often.
Yeah, it is quite rare, isn't it? I do think everyone, if it's a love octagon, like Cora is very much at the center, and everyone falls in love with Cora, Stella included in her own way, and I think she sees her as a sign as well, and kind of as she just sort of welcomes that new presence in her life, and with maybe the idea that this is who can take over once she's not there anymore, and so there's that sort of I fell in love with Stella reading both the novel and the screenplay, really, with her sort of, I think she's so quietly extraordinary, quite like there's this sort of humility and yet something so big about her. Is quite interesting to navigate somehow.
And Frank, for you, you're playing another man of science who's really, Dr. Luke Garrett, really on the precipice of exciting new discoveries like heart surgery.
Yeah. He is a heart surgeon. It was really interesting to do all the research into Victorian London, and hospitals of that time were pretty brutal, gory places. Coined as death houses, so if you went in, you probably weren't coming out. And I really loved all the sort of the gore and the blood and the sort of all of that good stuff. I found was really attractive to me, and. Yeah, but as everyone says, this kind of love octagon. Although I'm pretty sure we're just all in love with Claire, with Cora. So
No, it's reciprocated.
We all just love Cora, and but yeah, I thought for me, it was really a no-brainer. I mean, to work with Claire and Tom and Clémence and Haley and Jamal was really a great privilege for me.
You mentioned the research into the era. I'm curious for all of you, did they give you sort of like a crash course in the Victorian era? Is there like a school they send you to together so that you learn everything about it in 2 weeks?
there
Because a
were.
lot of it just come from reading the novel.
Which we were all going to a school, a Victorian school.
Yeah.
No, I think we all got our separate things. So yeah, a lot of my reading was into kind of the craft of surgery back then and butchery and all of that kind of stuff. So, but I don't know. Did you get given any different books, Claire or Tom?
I read a few books on the period, which, I found totally riveting. But ultimately, all of that information just felt like allowed me to feel entitled to just play her as I would now. And Clio really emphasized the importance of it just feeling raw and loose. Obviously there was so much care and imagination put into the set design and the costumes, which were absolutely beautiful and hyper-reverent to the period. But, I think the intention always, for everyone, was for it to feel, immediately relevant to audiences today. So there was no fancy acting, Yeah.
I mean, as I said, I know you're dealing with these big issues and you're shooting on location in and around Essex, and it's during a pandemic. I can only imagine how difficult that was. What was the atmosphere on set like? Were you all able to have fun?
I mean, it depends on your definition of fun. I personally, and we laugh about it, but Essex was so intense at that particular time. It was March, and the weather here in the UK always likes to remind you that it's still winter in March. Essex itself, the easternmost East Coast, is very wild and wet and windy and ancient, and we were in amongst all of it, all the wind and all the water and all the wildness, and so that was enjoyable. And
it was. I mean, it was. Evocative.
Yes.
But I would have to go to ground. I literally would There was no protection from the elements or the wind, which, I mean, the gales were crazy. And then the tides would come and you were stuck on your mark. There was nowhere to retreat. There was no trailer to take refuge in. So yeah, I mean, it was.
But it was
hardcore. But beautiful, and photographed really well.
I really enjoyed. I became a kind of weather vane. I kept insisting to Claire that the spring was coming. And when it came...
And I would just nod.
Yeah.
Well, again, it's such a beautiful series. Thank you all so much for being here. And again, congratulations on a great job.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jenelle, very much.
Cheers, thanks.